welcome to CGTN's special program on the Belt and Road Initiative, co-produced with Malaysia's national news agency Bernama. I'm Jiao Yang in Beijing.
I'm Kevin Barnaby from Bernama TV, and in collaboration with CGTN, we'll be talking about China's Belt and Road Initiative from Malaysia's perspective, and particularly the East Coast Rail Link.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. Now, 2023 is the 10th anniversary of China and Malaysia's comprehensive strategic partnership, and the two countries will also mark the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic ties next year. Let's start with a look at the outcomes their cooperation has yielded over the past years.
Malaysia is one of China's major partners under the Belt and Road Initiative. Their biggest joint infrastructure project is the $10 billion East Coast Rail Link. The lead contractor is state-owned China Communication Construction Company, and 70% of the project's 23,000 workers are locals. Spanning over 600 kilometers, the railway will link Malaysia's economic heartland on the west coast to its less developed east coast. It's intended to boost connectivity and improve logistics for trade, contributing 2.7% to Malaysia's economic growth. Trains will run at speeds of up to 160 kilometers per hour and cut travel from the northeastern city of Kota Bharu to the largest transport hub, Port Klang, to about 4 hours. However, the project had suffered setbacks. In 2018, Malaysia halted it, saying its cost was too high and beyond the country's financial capacity. In 2019, construction resumed after the budget was cut by a third. Despite changing governments and several route realignments, the project is on course for a target launch in 2027. The port city of Kuantan is a major stop along the railway. It's also the location for the two countries' first joint industrial park. The Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park was set up in 2013 and has a counterpart in Qingzhou in the south of China. They form a flagship Belt and Road project. Two countries, twin parks. The Kuantan Park hosts industries including palm oil, biomass, electronics, and green energy, while the Qingzhou complex is a hub for manufacturing of steel, tires, glass, and aluminum. Since it opened, the Kuantan Park has generated industrial output valued at over $8 billion and directed 10 million tons of goods through Kuantan Port. China has been Malaysia's biggest trading partner since 2009. It's expected that these Belt and Road projects will continue to inject impetus into bilateral cooperation and boost development in the region.
Well, let me hand over to Kevin now for more details and to get the Malaysian perspective on the BRI. Kevin.
All right, thank you very much, Jiao Yang. Now, in the studio with me, I have two guests to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, and more specifically, the East Coast Rail Link. Now, on my right, I've got Dato' Wei Chuan Beng, who is the co-chairman of Com Group. Now, Com is a subsidiary of China's Silk Road Group, a joint venture with his company, Digital Way Group. And of course, furthest to me is Dr. O.A. Sun, who is an international relations commentator. So we'll be checking in with them to discuss about these two particular bits in a bit. But first of all, the prosperity of the Asian region as a whole depends on cooperation and trade. Now, with China being the region's major powerhouse, countries in the Asian continent, especially Southeast Asia, can benefit from the spillover effect. Now, to achieve that, a holistic transport network plays a key role in ensuring that commerce and trade trickle down the entire supply chain and of course, the support chain as well. Hence, the East Coast Rail Link plays an integral part in China's Belt and Road Initiative in Malaysia. Now, Bernama TV's producer Mirza Hassan compiled this report.
The project, designed to facilitate the transport of goods, including palm oil, timber and other commodities from the East Coast states to the West Coast ports for export purposes, is a joint venture between Malaysia Rail Link and China Communications Construction. The railway will be used for both passenger and freight transport, linking Peninsular Malaysia's East Coast states such as Kelantan, Terengganu and Pahang with the West Coast states such as Negeri Sembilan, Selangor and the Federal Territory of Putrajaya, which is currently only partially connected by rail. Passenger services will be operated by a fleet of 11 set of 6-car electric multiple unit trains, each accommodating up to 440 passengers. The EMUs will be eco-friendly and produce less noise than other electrically powered trains.
Right, spanning approximately 665 kilometers from Kota Bharu in Kelantan all the way to Port Klang in Selangor. The rail network will be able to not opportunities for Malaysians.
With the completion of this project and the train able to cut travel times to the West Coast, people living at East Coast can now acquire jobs in the Klang Valley, thus improving their income and well-being. This would also create more economic spillovers in areas along the ECRL route, whereby development and more job opportunities can be created, benefiting more Malaysians. On the national front, this major undertaking will also help inspire investor confidence, attracting both local and foreign investment. Following Malaysia's close economic relationships with China, its largest trading partner, the ECRL also greatly benefits both countries.
With the ECRL able to bridge the gap between the east and west coasts of Malaysia, trade can be further expanded, causing an increase in Malaysia's GDP and providing China more access to Malaysian products and vice versa.
The ECRL project is funded in the form of a loan from China's state-owned Export-Import Bank. It will also benefit other ASEAN countries, as following completion of the project, the entire Asian continent will have a robust transport network. The project is thus the final piece that links Malaysia and China to all of Asia and the world.
Now, from China all the way to Southeast Asia, the rest of Asia, Europe, the Middle East and Africa, the entire Belt and Road Initiative will be able to link people and commerce from coast to coast. Mirza Hassan, Bernama TV.
All right, now we're going to talk to our two guests right now regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, first and foremost, Dr. Wei and Dr. O, thank you so much for joining us. Now, collectively, now we talk about Malaysia benefiting from the Belt Road Initiative. I mean, what's your view regarding that?
Well, I think, first of all, of course, we welcome more trade and investments with China. And under the Belt and Road Initiatives, there are the 5 principles. And I think trade facilitation is certainly one of them. And as we saw, of course, with this East Coast rail link, we also have facilitation of these communications infrastructures and so on. If we can, for example, link the production centers in Malaysia with, for example, the consumer base in China by means of rail links, I think that will, of course, facilitate Malaysia's trade with China, not only through the sea routes, but also through the land routes. So we look forward indeed for more export towards China.
Right. Dr. Wei, what do you think?
Well, I come from Kota Baru.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right.
The last point that the East Coast rail link will terminate. And I see this from the perspective of elevating the poverty, because the 2 states, the Kelantan and Terengganu, that will be served by the ECRL, are among the poorer states. And we are very hopeful that it could actually bring so much more new opportunities in terms of job creation, in terms of bringing the produce out there so that it can improve the income and elevate the cost, the standard of living of the people over there.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it will certainly also facilitate a lot more tourists coming to those part of the world. And I think that it has been the areas that deprive of development, deprive of investment, deprive of opportunities. And ECRL indeed present itself as a great opportunity to the people and the states.
Okay. So the thing is, now when we talk about the East Coast Rail Link, I mean, obviously, overall, we can see that it will benefit most of the East Coast states, especially those that are undeveloped areas, rural areas and everything else. But the thing is, now when we talk about the East Coast Rail Link, of course, there are certain things that come up. I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. There's been delays and more money invested in the project. I mean, at the end of the day, what, in your view, despite all of this, will this basically be valuable to this whole project? Will it actually value everyone in the state?
Well, of course, with this basic infrastructure being laid and so on, it gives opportunities for people from the East Coast states, as well as even from those in KL. They could transport their goods all the way up to China and so on. But indeed, we have to grasp this opportunity. Well, if we do nothing about it, if we just sort of let it be and we don't try to explore the various new business ventures that could be brought about by this East Coast Rail Link, then it will be laid to waste. So I think it's equally important. At the same time that we are completing, I think it's almost towards a completion now of this East Coast Rail Link. We also have some form of, shall we say, education and training of our local population as to how they could grasp this opportunity and improve their livelihood by means of more business opportunities, more opportunities to engage in trade and investment with China, for example.
Right. Do you agree with them?
Oh, well, you see, a project of this scale, it is not a bed of roses. There will be a lot of hiccups and there'll be a lot of learning from there. And what is important is this: we must actually continue to put together something that is relevant to the people, relevant to our economy, relevant to the culture, relevant to the livelihood of the people. So in this case, I do see that over time, we have adjusted the budget. We have also adjusted the content that local people are involved in, also participating from supply to co-construction. And importantly, also there is this element of knowledge transfer, technology transfer that I believe is also taking place. So that is the deepening of the cooperation beyond the infrastructure. And I'm hopeful that it will continue that way.
Okay, so the thing is now, when you talk about the budget and everything else that was spent into this, obviously before, there have been many people who've been renegotiating the budget and everything else. So the thing is now, when you talk about the overall budget, it was reduced sometime in 2018, actually. So the thing is, do you think the budget allocated initially may have been a little over the top in terms of the budget?
Well, of course, when we built, any infrastructure project, we would like it to be perfect, linking most.
I think that's basically what they all expect. They want it to be, perfect and everything.
But sometimes reality sets in, in 2018, and even until now with the pandemic and so on. Of course, the government's revenues have been greatly reduced. So even though we would like to have the perfect rail links linking all the major population centers, sometimes we need to be realistic. We need to cut back a little bit such that the project could still go on, but perhaps we had to make do with the second best, because even if it is the second best, we could hopefully still make the best use of it and thereby increase our trade and investment opportunities with China.
Okay, do you subscribe to that? Because we had that discussion a little earlier.
This is important learning. You see, we have seen that how we could better utilize the infrastructure along the way. So making adjusting especially from budget point of view, and also more strategically linking those critical areas will become the important consideration rather than going into all kind of routes, right?
Right.
So I think it is a necessary change as our country get into a more maturing democratic practice, more maturing political practices, and also going deeper into the regulatory and policy making, especially in this kind of a huge infrastructure project.
Now, when we talk about infrastructure, project as well, it's a massive infrastructure project. Let's be real about that. So as far as the pandemic is concerned, that obviously, hit all sectors of society, so to speak, not just here, but basically everywhere around the world. So when we talk about massive infrastructure, do you think Malaysia is pretty much prepared and anticipating all of this, and basically prepared to move forward, given the fact that we had this particular issue, we had to halt a lot of things, changes in the global economy and everything else? How is Malaysia sort of handling this particular situation?
Well, next to perhaps the city-state of Singapore, Malaysia is perhaps the Southeast Asian country which is most prepared for this, because we already have some of the best, shall we say, road infrastructures around the region. But I have always wondered why we are lacking in this rail or railway infrastructures, because as we go around the world, whether it's China and other places, the more advanced parts of the world, we always see that industrialization go hand in hand with railways. And in Malaysia, unfortunately, perhaps we could catch up a little bit with our rail infrastructure. And with this rail linking the east and the west coast of peninsula, hopefully it could give another route for goods and people to transit one another.
Okay. And
I find that looking at the Malaysian history, in 97, prior to 97, we were one of the 4 or how many little tiger, little dragon economy of the Asia. However, ever since then, ever since the Asia financial crisis, we have not been able to make significant progress. And in fact, we have been lacking behind in terms of the build-up of infrastructure. So it takes leaders with a great vision and courage, plus the support of the right-minded partner in order to put together a brand new infrastructure ready for this new millennia, actually.
Right. So the thing is, you think that this particular project that we have, the Belt and Road Initiative, is definitely a big boon to the country, even though there have been setbacks, so to speak.
It is a necessity because we have been very much stagnant since 97, 98 until today. 25 years past.
That's a long time,
it's high time that we really get a major upgrade.
Okay. So what about our national debts? I mean, obviously, you know, China has invested a lot in Malaysia as well. I mean, this is just one of many projects that they've got in the Belt and Road Initiative. So the thing is, I mean, as far as Malaysia is concerned, I mean, our national debt, I mean, considering the massive infrastructure that we have, I mean, may also require Malaysia to borrow more. I mean, that's something that I think will probably happen down the road. I mean, we can't really tell. So what can be the positive takeaway from this?
Well, we certainly have very high degree of foreign debt. But I think if we are borrowing from China, knowing China, I don't think China would be. I think there's a Chinese idiom. You don't sort of throw stones down the wells, right? Knowing that if we are encountering problems in repaying our foreign debts and so on, I'm very confident the China side will reevaluate the terms and so on, such that eventually we'll pay our debts, but perhaps not in a very accelerated manner.
Yeah, I would think the same. Yeah.
Well, debt is always very relative.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So in our case, we are like neither too high, certainly it's not low. And it is also a factor of how quickly can we raise our income of the country. Now, this kind of infrastructure is really done with the intention to raise the income level. If we stay on track, then the debt level will reduce. So it is just a matter of at which point in time, what kind of debt, and are we able to service them in the future? Is this too burdensome? I think the balancing act is there. I'm confident that we do have sufficient wisdom to make the best use of the ratio for our purpose presently and also for the future of Malaysia, especially for the people.
All right, thanks very much for your insights on that. We're going to head over to Zhao Yang now in Beijing for more discussions on the Belt Road Initiative. Zhao Yang.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, economic ties between China and Malaysia have grown ever closer in the past decade. So let's take a look at some of the figures on that. Well, China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner for the last 14 years. Malaysia is China's second largest import and export partner within ASEAN. In 2022, trade volume reached over $200 billion. That's a 15% increase on the previous year. China was also Malaysia's biggest source of foreign investment last year, totaling $12.5 billion. It accounted for more than 1/3 of Malaysia's total foreign direct investment. Now, here in the Beijing studio with us, we have Han Hua, president of the Beijing Belt and Road Cooperative Community, and Song Qingrun, a professor from the School of Asian Studies at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. So, I could see you both nodding away as we were listening to Dr. O and Dr. Wei there give their opinions on the BRI. And I do want to ask you, first of all, Ms. Hua, what do you think are the biggest accomplishments of the BRI project in Malaysia?
That's a very good question. Actually, from our Malaysian colleagues' discussion just now, I would like to say that in addition to the ECRL, East Coast Rail Link, and I think the two industrial parks in each side, one in China and one in Malaysia, could also be a very good accomplishment under the Belt and Road Initiative framework. And in addition to that, I would like to mention that the political ties in the past decades, in the past 10 years, shows that the bilateral, how important the bilateral relationship can significantly enhance the cooperation's economic development on both sides under the BRI framework. So this is what I want to mention in particular.
I mean, China has been making massive investments in Malaysia and all these Belt and Road project partner countries. What are China's biggest economic gains, Professor Song?
China has invested a lot, not only about in the fields of railways construction in Malaysia, but also China enterprises invest a lot in Malaysia's auto manufacturing products, and also the mobile smartphone products, and also the new energy sector. So China enterprises can earn some profits through this kind of cooperation. And also for China and Malaysia, there are flagged projects to countries, to industrial parks. So in these industrial parks, China enterprises, a lot of Chinese enterprises has invest a lot in Malaysia. So this is a win-win deal. China enterprises can earn some profits, but for Malaysia, these factories will create new jobs, opportunities for Malaysia workers, and also they will create more taxes for the government.
Talking about business opportunities, there's also the digital economy. So that's an area that China and Malaysia are working on. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim visited China earlier this year, and they talked about this. How big do you think the potential is in this area?
Oh, I think the potential is really great and significant because these are also the three major or priority areas for China's next step development. So we have a lot to learn from each other. For example, when the Prime Minister of Malaysia visited China, he specifically mentioned about the development of digital economy in the rural areas in particular. For example, they need to increase their coverage of 4G and 5G into a very high degree, like over 60% or even 70% in their rural areas, which is also a reflection of the China's past achievements of the digital economy coverage in the rural areas. But he further mentioned about that these coverage in the rural areas will create the job opportunities for the rural young people when they don't need to leave their countries, leave their countryside, leave their hometowns, but stay connected with the world, with the cities, with the job opportunities. This actually echoes China's development in our plan to do a beautiful village in China and to make the young people in the village areas to also stay connected, to also create job opportunities, to also contribute to the world, to the country when they can be connected through the digital economy. So this is a very small areas, but with great potential. Same with the blue economy, when the two countries can have some transfer of technologies in increasing the seafood provision for both countries, and also to increase the welfare of the people's livelihood.
Now, Dr. Wei, you have something you want to add to this?
Yeah, this is actually very much from my heart. I feel that digital economy moving forward will be the major focus of the so-called Belt Road Coast Prosperity kind of initiative. The reason is this. It is through digital economy we have seen how China has alleviated the hardcore poverty, and Malaysia and also the neighboring countries would want to be able to alleviate poverty as well. Now, there is this 1/3 of our population staying in villages. There is a need to bring the idea of digital village to improve the healthcare, improve education, improve the what I call that, the commerce, the income, such that then we can lift the people's income and alleviate the poverty. In addition to that, digital economy will certainly be a very major instrument in order to boost the industry's productivity. And in addition to that, it will also be the platform for government to be even more effective and efficient, apart from empowering youth and women. So digital economy should be the way to go for the Belt Road Initiative.
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, Dr. Wei, what you're saying there very much echoes what Ms. Han was saying earlier about how this is about sharing the experiences, right, between the governments and helping to find these development opportunities. When it comes to the two countries and their strengths and their characteristics, what do you think makes them complementary partners in this BRI project, Professor Song?
Yeah, there are a lot of areas for China and Malaysia can cooperate on under the BRI framework. For example, Malaysia has a lot of fresh fruits, so China can import more. This is also a win-win deal. Malaysia farmers can export more and more fruits to China. They can earn a lot of money. This is also about will be helpful to poverty alleviation. And also China consumers can eat a lot of fresh fruits from Malaysia, so they are delicious. Now Malaysia's the most popular mobile payment brand, Touch and Go, are conducting with China Alipay to do some financial service in Malaysia. So this is also another green development. This is a win-win deal. This will facilitate China-Malaysia's trade process and also will save the people.
You know, there have been some media claims that the BRI projects do create heavy debt burden for some countries. But the Malaysian Transport Minister made a point that any government would weigh up the costs and the benefits before committing to any kind of undertaking. You know, that makes perfect sense to me. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, my immediate answer would be there would be never a debt trap for any countries alongside the Belt and Road, for any countries who are engaged into the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative is proposed by China, but it belongs to the world. But China, from the very beginning, has been investing hundreds and thousands of billions of dollars and RMBs in the Belt and Road project. Who would pay such a high money and make such a great investment by laying a trap for other countries and even for the country itself? So this is just a Western media narrative, in my opinion. Just as our Malaysian colleagues just mentioned, every government has its own governance, and being it bad or good, they have to come up with its own fiscal plan and its own priority list for its own development. So they will have a figuring out and calculation about the investment, about what kind of investment they will structure about their big projects.
Right, there's an informed decision that they come to themselves. But the other claim that sometimes we hear is who's exerting influence in the region. Now, ASEAN members, they do have a bit of a balancing act to play, what with the US also seeking to cement its alliances in the region. But, does it really have to be a us or them game? I mean, do countries in the region really need to pick sides, Professor Song?
Yeah, this is a question about the regional cooperation or Southeast Asia countries' diplomacy is inclusive or exclusive. This issue is very important now, and also a hot topic. We know that some Western countries are asking the ASEAN countries to choose sides between China and the US, but we noticed that the ASEAN said no. They practice the open regionalism and multilateralism to get good relations both with China and the US. So because the ASEAN countries don't want to see the serious confrontation between China and the US in Southeast Asia region, they want this region to become a peaceful, prosperous region. So this is also China has a similar concept with ASEAN's regional cooperation concept, because China and also put forward the open regionalism, and also China and ASEAN together practices open regionalism and true multilateralism in this region. China and ASEAN has conducted inclusive cooperation, regional cooperation in East Asia region, not exclusive.
Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think inclusiveness and being a neutral stance is actually the two major characteristics of ASEAN's this organization, which I actually appreciate a lot. And the other appreciation is for the China and ASEAN relationship in this region. I think this so-called bilateral relationship is actually setting a very good example for the Western to see how a regional cooperation can foster and can have its very clear stance and can be both inclusive and also be both very open to any concept, any ideas, as long as it fosters the people's development. The Malaysian government proposed this Malaysian Madani proposal, which make people-centered development its major principle. And we have the similar one. We proposed the 3 global initiatives: global civilization, global security, and global development. So I think this actually set a good example of how a region can cooperate in a very positive way.
Well, I'd love to also get the opinion of our guests in Malaysia on this question, Dr. Wei and Dr. Oh. When Malaysia chooses to cooperate under the Belt and Road Initiative, is cooperation really about choosing sides?
Well, I think it's choosing the side that actually bring the greatest benefit to Malaysia as well as this region. I think that will be the most important consideration. Any cooperation, it is really meant for our people, especially the poor people, to benefit from it. So I think it will be very meaningful if it is continuous, there's a continuous enhancement of such recognition that everyone has their dream. Malaysia has Malaysian dream, China has China dream, US has US dream, ASEAN has ASEAN dream, but all of us are dreaming about better life. So I think if we work on that, it will be okay for the world.
Well, there's price to be paid for choosing side. So whichever side would pay us more in the sense of trade and investment, we are probably going to align ourselves with that side, at least for the moment, until the other side is ready to top up with that level of trade and investment. These developing countries, let's not kid ourselves, in Southeast Asia, and developing countries by definition, they need trade and they need investments. As long as you top up with your trade and investment, most likely we'll be with you.
We need the opportunities.
Well, the outcome that we are really looking at is actually a progressive, a sustainable, innovative, and progressive Malaysia. So I think the sides that we will have to take is based on the stand that will bring this kind of a progressive and sustainable future for Malaysia.
Okay, so this question is for both your guests, obviously. So we already have sort of investment ties as one of the major initiatives that we have in Malaysia right now, and it's propelled China to invest in Malaysia heavily. In fact, where we've got the East Coast railing, obviously, happening at this moment, which will be completed in 2027. So are there any more potential areas? I mean, we talked about the, EVs and, connectivity and internet connectivity and everything else. Are there any more areas that, both countries can explore, which in turn will, further bolster the relationship ties, not only between the two countries, but around ASEAN as well?
Okay, let me try to answer this question first. I think there are more areas for both sides to tap and to explore. Maybe these areas are in different kind of development stage, but certainly two people can work harder to explore these areas, such as the blue economy, which I just mentioned a little bit, to see whether there will be any technology transfer regarding how to, on one side, protect the blue resources, blue sea and other resources, on the other hand, to develop and to make people well and make people wealthier, living a better life. This is just one area. And I also noticed that some internet applications, such as Little Red Book, is also very popular in Malaysia, among Malaysian youngsters. So I'm just thinking, alongside with this kind of popular applications in both countries, whether there will be any investment opportunities for the Chinese side to invest more into Malaysia market and to explore this great potential market with ever-growing population in your country. So these are the two areas that, in my mind, for the time being.
For my opinion is that we should put more effort, make more data efforts to on the cooperation about digital economy, e-commerce, transnational mobile payment cooperation. Because we know that digital economy is the new type of economy in the future. And also, if we can develop this, the transnational e-commerce very well, this will be helpful for China, Malaysia, the transnational trade. And also, this will be helpful for China and Malaysia people to conduct tourism in both countries, because the payment will be convenient for each other.
Well, thank you all. And, we have been focusing a lot on the economic aspects, but there's also another aspect we'd like to move on to, and that is the engagement amongst the people of both countries. Now, that is key to giving the Belt and Road Initiative a human touch. It is, after all, the connection between people who pave the way for willing collaboration and also make economic and business cooperation more productive. So let's take, for example, the first ever show from China's iconic Inspiration series to be created and performed outside of China. Encore Malacca is a close collaboration with the Malaysian developer that built the custom-made theatre, as well as the local performers and architects, and Chinese engineers and also construction firms. Ryan Meltzer takes a look.
The Encore Malacca show is an unrivaled spectacle with its colourful costumes, elaborate sets and multimedia projections, and with the seating revolving 360 degrees around the stage. The show and the theatre were the vision of Chinese director Wang Chaoge. But it was very much a China-Malaysia collaboration, says the man who spearheaded this $100 million project.
We have the Chinese director, but local architects, local performers, local story, and the Chinese technologies, both sides of it benefit together in terms of understanding and in terms of technologies, in terms of all the knowledge, and in terms of whatever economics benefits.
A subsidiary of China State Construction turned the directors' and architects' vision into reality.
This project, we're using new technology never seen before in Southeast Asia. Everything had to be high precision, down to the millimeter. This is to make sure that the seating rotates smoothly and quietly, ensuring a perfect viewing experience for the audience.
There can be few places more fitting to a collaboration like this.
In the 15th century, the famed Chinese admiral Zheng He brought his fleet to Malacca several times, leaving an enduring cultural and ethnic imprint on the city.
Bu says the Encore Malacca project shows collaboration between China and countries like Malaysia can be about more than infrastructure, trade and industry.
The most important thing I always believe is to connect people's heart by building the understandings in terms of the culture and psychological understanding of each other. Only by improving this part, actually, we will have a better world.
After halting for 3 years, the Encore Malacca show is set for a revival once tourist arrivals bounce back. Meanwhile, other performers are taking advantage of the theatre's unique attributes to stage their shows. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Malacca, Malaysia.
Well, Ms. Han, Professor Song, when we talk about the BRI, it's the vast infrastructure projects that come to mind. But, when it comes to people, would you say that it's also helped to promote communication and understanding, Ms. Han?
Oh, of course. I myself eat more and more durian, even in the pandemic period. So this is my very direct and immediate feedback towards the Malaysian products, and I like it. It's very delicious, and I had honor actually by inviting the Malaysian ambassador to China to visit Hangzhou, my hometown, and he was fascinated by the local sceneries and everything else, including the Hangzhou cuisine. So I think people-to-people exchange is like the backbone of the two countries, the bilateral relationship development, and it's always a two-way street in my mind. So I think it's very, very important. Yeah.
How does it boost economic and trade ties, Professor Song?
Yeah. We know that people-to-people exchanges will be helpful to promote the bilateral relations between China and Malaysia. I can give you some examples how the people-to-people exchanges will boost bilateral economic cooperation. One example is that we know that in Malaysia there are a lot of Malaysia Chinese. They know the Malaysia very well. They know the Chinese culture, Chinese society very well. So now these people, most of those people are doing business in Malaysia and also in China, both as a bridge to conduct business between Malaysia and China. Another example is in my university, Beijing Foreign Studies University. I noticed that there are scores of Malaysian students studying in my university. They are study hard, they are very active, and their major is business. So I think in 5 years or 10 years, these students will become new businessmen between China and Malaysia. They will become new bridges to conduct business between China and Malaysia.
All right, well, so lots of potential. If we can get Kevin and your guests' opinions here, what are expectations from Malaysia on this front and on relationship and developments under the BRI?
Want to go ahead and answer that?
While talking about the cultural exchange in the context of BRI, I like to introduce a Malay proverb that is, tak kenal maka tak cinta. That means if you do not know each other, you will not be able to fall in love with each other. You know, a lot of countries, especially Malaysia, China, and this region, we have a lot in common. That is based on the Eastern values. So that values will then translate into the way we live our life, even the way we get treatment. In China, there is this traditional Chinese medicine. In Malaysia, we also have traditional Malaysia or Malay tradition in terms of the medicine. So therefore, these are the areas it forms part of culture, apart from food, apart from the way we want to be educated because we want the society to respect the elders and all this. There are a lot in common for us to kind of learn about each other so that we could actually get a lot more out of the synergy of friendship in all the various aspects of community development.
All right. What about you, Dr. O?
Well, I think a very practical and pragmatic field would be tourism. I come from the eastern part of Malaysia, the state of Sabah. Every year we welcome a lot of China's tourists. I think if there could be, for example, more direct flights between some of the major cities of China to KL, as well as even to my hometown of Kota Kinabalu in Sabah, it would be wonderful where we could see more tourists visiting each other's cultural as well as natural sites. I think we could do more touristic promotions in each other's countries. So I think that's one way of doing it. Of course, you mentioned education. I think we welcome more of China's universities to open up their branch campuses here. Hopefully, some of the more well-to-do Malaysian universities would do the same in China so that we open up more educational activities for our students and thereby bringing our relationship closer to one another.
So basically now when we talk about the relationship that exists between Malaysia and China today, I mean, would you say that the relationship is at a level where mutual trust just exists? You know, I mean, they can trust each other, they take each other's word for it and everything else for whatever we suggest and everything else. Have we reached that particular level?
Well, I think we are at a level where we feel very comfortable with one another. And that is because, you know, these bilateral relations between Malaysia and China is not purely on a government-to-government level. It's also, as we suggested just now, at a people-to-people level. For example, the small and medium enterprises in both countries, they conduct a lot of trades with one another, and thereby there's this very natural bond between the peoples of both countries, and that actually drives this sort of bilateral relations.
All right.
Well, I think trust could happen at the various levels, at the country level, at the industry level, as well as at the people level. And it has to start with understanding each other and especially facing the common interests and common threats. At the country level, we see that a country, that means that leads to the industry and the people. What are those common threats? The threats of high interest rate, the threat of high inflation, the threat of environmental destruction, and all these things will bring us together. So we may still have some differences in terms of the way we approach things. However, when it comes to really addressing some of the bigger agenda and common interests, I think this will then bring people together, and therefore we don't even have to talk about trust because we are on the same boat.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for providing your insights on that. We're going to toss over back to Zhao Yang in Beijing right now.
Well, certainly some very positive outlooks there. Thank you so much to all our guests. It's been a pleasure speaking to you all. I've been really appreciative of all your insights and your time. And with that, we will end this special program on the Belt and Road Initiative in Malaysia, co-produced with Bernama.
Yeah, for Bernama, I would like to thank CGTN for the collaboration, and to all our viewers, thank you very much for watching.
So on behalf of the team here in Beijing, once again, thank you for joining us. I'm Jiao Yang, and please do follow our series of cooperative programs on the Belt and Road still to come.